We talked some training camp battles with Ryan Mathews. Who will be battling each other at camp? We'll do that next.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Tuesday, June 25th and Wednesday, June 26th. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. That includes subscribing and watching for free on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Podcast today brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Playoffs wind down. The sports stop really sporting like we want them to. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions, Matt Derry Facebook fan page. We are joined today by one of our buddies from Pride of Detroit. Senior editor Ryan Mathews is with us from POD. We love them. Let's talk some camp coming up in less than a month with Ryan. What's up, brother?
What's going on, Matt? Thanks for having me back, man.
Always good to have you on, Ryan. How's the offseason treat you?
Good. You know, it's been nice to get a little bit of take a breath, right? After a very long season, right? We're not used to those in Detroit, but, getting a little bit of time to breathe and ready for football to start back up now that, sports are basically over, like you just said.
Yeah, last night was fun. I mean, I really had no dog in the fight. I was rooting for Ken Holland. I know there were people rooting against him. I was rooting for him just because I knew him a little bit personally, and I wanted Edmonton to win and that country to get the cup back. But other than that, you're right. It's like, here we go. Hoops is done. Hockey's done. Unfortunately, baseball appears to be done. Right? And it's like the Lions are our only hope. It's crazy, isn't it?
Weird times we live in, Matt. Weird times we live in.
It is nuts. Thoughts on the entire offseason? Now we're in the summer. There hasn't been a ton of June 1 cuts or movement. Kind of know where the Lions sit from a roster perspective, but how do you kind of view free agency, the draft, or where the Lions sit right now?
Yeah, there's a lot to tackle there, Matt. I think the thing that stands out to me most about this offseason is this is the season where we saw Brad Holmes take care of some homegrown talent, right? Like you nailed the pick with Sewell. You nailed the pick with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Both those guys are here long-term. You signed Jared Goff to this big extension. This is the era of Detroit Lions football, and it seems like the window is open now, and now's the time to get after it. And I think that was kind of reflected in free agency. They did the same thing that they did a year ago. They completely reimagined the secondary, right? I mean, they kind of had their hand forced by, the situation that happened with Cam Sutton. But I think even had that situation not happened, I think the Lions still would have completely reimagined that secondary like they did with getting Robertson, trading for Carlton Davis, drafting the guys that they did in the first and second round in Arnold and Rakestraw. It's very encouraging to see how many resources have been poured into the defense, because I think we can all agree that this team's offense, we're expecting big things from them to be a top 5 offense moving forward consistently. But it was the defense that had to kind of close the gap. Brad Holmes has tried again, Matt. He's definitely poured a lot of his assets and a lot of his resources into making that defense a contender.
Well, I did this last week. I looked at the numbers. They were 19th last year in the NFL in defense. They got better from 32 the year before. Number 2 against the run, but 27 against the pass. And so maybe it's just as basic as Brad Holmes looked up and said, statistically, where do we suck? And you're right. They got to get more pressure on the quarterback, right? But that secondary being rehauled, especially at corner. I love the depth they have at cornerback right now, don't you?
Yeah, the depth at corner is great. And there's a lot of positional versatility too, right, Matt? And this is something that, Eric Schlitt and I were talking about, is Brian Branch making that move, it seems like, to playing more safety this year. Because if you look at the snap counts from his usage in the playoffs, a big contributor, over 95% of the snaps against the Rams, a ton of snaps against the Buccaneers, only played 41% of snaps against the 49ers in that conference championship game. And I think that they want to move him back to safety to get him out in the field a little bit more. You sign a guy like Robertson, maybe he's a competitor in there in the slot. Maybe it's Rakestraw. Terrion Arnold and Carlton Davis are probably going to be your two guys on the outside. But they have a lot of pieces, and they have some interesting pieces too that, if Emmanuel Mosley can come back and be healthy, that's awesome depth. We saw where this team was a year ago, Matt, when it came to cornerback depth down the stretch. Kindle Vildor was your starting cornerback opposite of Cam Sutton in the conference championship game. I think that, Brad Holmes really insulated himself, and he really insulated that secondary with some guys who can contribute.
A shout out to Eric Schlitt, and of course, the first lady of Pride of Detroit, Laura Schlitt as well, who's an excellent follow on Twitter and a great Lions fan. All right. So how much, when you look at it, you go, all right, they redid the entire secondary. Like you said, not the entire. Kirby Joseph's back. If he's back, you mentioned Branch. Mm-hmm. And maybe Melifano is the odd man out when it comes to snap count, because if Branch moves back, he could be the odd man out. And that's number one. Number two, how much, though, do they need to get better up front? The addition of Reader's great, but really on the edge, Marcus Davenport, a lot of pressure on him to get to the quarterback. It can't just be Hutchinson again, right?
Yeah, it can't just be Hutch. I think DJ Reader is going to open up something along the interior that Aleem McNeil, who interestingly enough, when you talk about homegrown talent that was handsomely rewarded for their efforts in their rookie contracts in Sewell and St. Brown, well, another guy from that draft class is Aleem McNeil. Is he going to earn himself a big contract extension? I think that really depends on how much can you be a pass rush contributor for this team, Matt. Point blank, Aleem McNeil has done, so much to improve this run defense. Like you mentioned, I mean, making that huge jump from being, in the 30s to jumping up to second in defense, run defense, that is. But it's the pass rush productivity that we've seen flashes of, right? I think you can probably remember the week 11 against the Giants in 2022. He had 10 pressures. It was like the most pressures by any player over 320 pounds in the PFF era. We've seen flashes of Aleem McNeil be a productive pass rusher, but we haven't seen it consistently. And I think that adding DJ Reader, it's the first legitimate player that I think they put next to McNeil, right? I mean, it's been a rolling Rolodex of different players, of Bugs and Benito Jones and, Levi Onwuzurike. There's a lot of rotating cast of characters they put next to him, but I think putting a legitimate guy who you have to double team DJ Reader. I don't think he's a guy that you can ignore. And I think that's going to open up a lot of things for everybody. I know everybody's so hard pressed to put someone opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, but put somebody in the middle and look what it does for a lot of these defenses around the league. Chris Jones in Kansas City, Aaron Donald in Los Angeles and St. Louis. But I'm not saying that DJ Reader is that kind of player, but I think you want to see what you can have with DJ and Aleem on the field at the same time. I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for him.
Yeah, I really think just health with DJ Reader is the biggest question mark, because you're right. If he's on the field and healthy, we know what kind of impact he's going to have. Ryan Mathews with us from Pride of Detroit. Follow him on Twitter at Ryan_POD. Training camp battles will be interesting, but there will be a couple. We'll get into a bunch, but what's the one that stands out for you that you look up and you say, man, I can't wait till July 24th and we get to see who's against whom? What battle maybe intrigues you the most?
Man, I think it's that nickel cornerback position, because that seemed to be, wrapped up and not given. Everything's earned on this team, right? But Brian Branch had that thing locked up real early on. Like, the Lions knew they had a guy that they could put right there, keep him as close to the line of scrimmage as possible. You're not putting a ton on his plate in terms of coverage responsibilities and things like that. Put a guy like that where, his instincts are sniff the ball out and go and get it. That's awesome. But now you want to move him back to safety, and that opens up that spot there. I'm really intrigued by who they're going to put there. Is it going to be Meek Robertson? Like, you sign that guy to a significant chunk of money. He's going to be getting a lot of snaps. Is it going to be in the slot? Is it going to be Rakestraw? They have options there. So I think that's a really interesting camp battle for me is how that nickel cornerback position is going to shake out first and foremost.
A couple other battles I want to get to with Ryan, including, we got to talk about kicker. I mean, this is the most exciting. Not that the Lions care who the kicker is. They haven't for 3 years, but maybe we'll do that with Ryan Mathews from Pride of Detroit coming up next. But first, Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We all love sports. We love them so much we don't want them to stop. But the playoffs have wound down. Yes, congratulations to the Florida Panthers last night. So we got fewer games going on. The sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets all of us keep the sports going whenever we want. All you got to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that you are in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Tonight, Tigers and Phillies, probably betting the under, right? Suarez, it's been unbelievable for Philly and school for the Tigers. You can do that at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of MLB and of the Locked On Podcast Network. Ryan Mathews with us from Pride of Detroit. Check out all of their work at prideofdetroit.com. We're on that site each and every day. And by the way, if you go to prideofdetroit.com today, you will see the training camp schedule for open practices. Lions will report July 23rd. They'll be practicing July 24th. First season ticket holders only date to go see the Lions in a open practice down at 222 Rodwood Drive, Saturday, July 27th, 8:30 a.m. But they have the entire schedule there on the POD website. All right, Ryan, what else? I mean, we joke about kicker, but like, seriously, is this the season where Jake Bates just takes over, is the guy, beats out Badgley and is cranking through 60-yarders, and the Lions have a weapon there? Because they really, for the first 3 years, really haven't, under Holmes and Campbell, haven't had one.
It's the Hollywood storyline that everybody wants to come true, right, Matt? And this was, I mean, you kind of twisted my arm to get on here. And once you mentioned kicker battle, I was like, you know what? I'm sold, man. I can't wait to get back in the saddle and talk to you about kickers.
Oh, man.
Waiving James Turner is not going to be a problem, right, Matt? Now that the Packers claimed him off waivers, that's not going to come back to bite the Lions.
I know. You knew you knew Green Bay was getting either Bates or Turner, unless the Lions were going to keep both, all three. But I didn't. I know it's a 90-man roster right now, but you knew Green Bay was taking them.
Right. And interestingly enough, the Lions do have 89 guys, right, on their 90-man roster, so they still have a spot that's open. But I get the sense that, like, why carry three kickers? You have Badgley, who I think that the Lions are still. I would view him still as the leader in the clubhouse, so to speak. I think that he has some established NFL film. Made a really big kick in the playoffs against the Rams. Whether or not he was trusted to make a kick against the 49ers remains to be understood. But I think that they still trust Badgley. I think they're comfortable with Badgley. And I think that the kicker position, to me, remains largely irrelevant because you don't have a Justin Tucker kind of kicker on your team unless Jake Bates turns into that guy. But you also have Dan Campbell, and you have one of the most aggressive coaches on fourth down. The kicker position matters very little to me. It should matter less to people around town, but backup quarterbacks and kickers, Matt, that's what this city's kind of known for in terms of their football talk in the doldrums of the offseason.
For sure. And I do think there is something to maybe over the last couple of years, Brad Holmes thinking, you're right, Dan goes for it. We've got a really good fourth down offense. We've got a really good offensive coordinator. You're right. Maybe it doesn't matter. But again, it mattered in that championship game because I think Dan would tell you maybe 1, 2, 3 of those decisions I'd want back and I'd send Badgley out there. But outdoors, I don't think he trusted him 47 and out. And this kid Bates, look, it is a Hollywood story. It's fun. He was on the Michigan Panthers. But he was hitting in that stadium with ease from 63 and 64. So it's intriguing.
It is. Yeah, it's very intriguing. I can't wait for Chicago to be in a dome. Next is going to be Green Bay, Matt.
Let's go, man. You're just completely squashing my bit here, Ryan. Jeez, I could, I have this bit on the show where I reach for my list, and this is my list of all the kickers that the Lions have had for the last 3 years. I mean, we could talk about Dom Eberle and remember the Santoso kick in Pittsburgh. Come on.
Oh man, I actively try to forget that Pittsburgh game each and every day of my life. That was also a banner game for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
That's
Goff was playing with one arm; he couldn't even throw.
That's right, and Mason Rudolph, right? Was leading that Steelers team.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, too, I think some of the kicker stuff that's interesting too is the new kickoff rules, right? Like you want a kicker who's accurate and who can put that ball in that specific spot, so that you're not costing your team, some extra, yards if you're kicking it through the end zone. So I think that plays into it too, and I think that also kind of favors Badgley a little bit in terms of his accuracy and being able to place balls. Whether or not we'll see maybe Jack Fox do a little bit of that stuff if they can get that out of him. But I think all of that is a really interesting wrinkle to this offseason. And one of the things I'm looking forward to with training camp is like, who's going to be that kick returner? Who's going to be that person that's, going to be charged with kicking the ball and getting it exactly where that, kickoff team needs it to be. So.
And you want 2 returners back there with these new rules. So I would figure, wouldn't we figure one of them would be Jamison Williams?
Matt, when the rule was first announced and I finally understood it, I was like, this is Jamison Williams' job. To me, I mean, you think about where he is in the pecking order in terms of this offense as far as pass catchers go. You want to throw the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown. You want to throw the ball to Sam Laporta. You want to get Jahmyr Gibbs more involved in the passing game, I think, than you did a year ago. Jamison Williams kind of sits a little further down on that pecking order. If he was your number 1 receiver, maybe I don't want him back there returning kicks like he's Antonio Brown, right? But let's find a role for the guy. Let's find a way to get the ball in his hand and let him be the playmaker that everybody wants him to be. This could be a really interesting spot for him. I think another guy, though, is Khalif Raymond. I think Khalif Raymond could be an awesome dynamite guy back there who's, the definition of he's a muscle hamster, right? Like he's so, compact and strong and quick and fast. Like I like that. Is it Sione Vaki? That this is a guy that the Lions really, really liked, obviously, and made a move to get in the draft. That's another guy who can, kind of go in the hopper and you see if he's going to work out back there. But that's one of the most interesting, things I'm looking forward to in training camp is that kick return job.
I think August Vaki will shine in those preseason games. I already dubbed it Vaki Town. I think I think we're gonna have to. I may have to patent that. I'm going to talk to my my man Doug Lalone, my patent attorney. But we may need to print some T-shirts. All right,
that's right.
Wide receiver 4. Last question on training camp battles. Green versus DPJ. Who you got?
I want to give the edge to DPJ just because Brad Holmes traded for him, right? So he clearly likes the guy. I don't want to give him too much of the Trinity Benson treatment, so to speak. That Brad Holmes invested draft capital, so we're trying to make Trinity Benson work. It's a little bit different with DPJ because, and Matt, you're hot on the pulse of Cleveland sports, but that year that he had with Baker Mayfield, I don't think it was a fluke.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I think he's a legit deep threat. He also came here at the trade deadline. It's really hard to get integrated and build chemistry with the quarterback, and your team's making a playoff run. I don't think they're worried about like, man, Jared Goff really needs to stay back and get some more reps with DPJ. But when Khalif went down, who was their punt returner? They went to him. So they obviously trust him. I think that there's a role for him. I would love it if Antoine Green plays up and into that role, but I would give the edge right now to DPJ.
Let's get into the outlook for the team, the rest of the division with Ryan. And also I want to ask him if he has a concern or one big concern that he has with the team. We'll do that next. More with our buddy Ryan Mathews from prideofdetroit.com. Best place to get all your Lions news. We always talk about POD, Lions Wire, Jeff, Jeremy, Eric, Ryan. Everybody does such a great job of those 2 sites, and we're there each and every day. All right, Ryan. So as far as the outlook goes for the Lions, do you anticipate, are you one of these Super Bowl or bust people? Or are you talking, all right, they're going to rematch with the Niners again? How do you kind of view the schedule, maybe the win total and how it's all going to shake out?
The NFC North is a bloodbath. I truly think you look at that division. If the Vikings can figure out the quarterback position, I think, you get Brian Flores back there and he's that, mastermind on defense. Like whatever kind of personnel they have, I think that Flores is just going to make it work. The Vikings are going to be an annoying team. If they can get the quarterback position figured out, then they're a team that you have to like take seriously. Like there are no divisional games off, I think, in the NFC North. And it's been a while since I think any team in the NFC North could say that, right? Like it's almost kind of like a rotating, okay, it's the Bears. Okay, it's the Lions. Okay, it's the Vikings. but I think that all of your divisional games, they really matter. And I still think that my expectations are that the Lions should win the NFC North. I think they should take care of business. I think that they should host another home playoff game. But would it shock me if Jordan Love is the real deal? And, the Packers, Christian Watson has finally figured out why his hamstrings have not been healthy. Okay. Yeah, I get it. Like the Packers have a team that I think could win the NFC North. I think the Bears are probably further away than people think they are. I'm not entirely sold on Caleb Williams. I'm not entirely sold on, Keenan Allen and Odunze and, DJ Moore all hitting the ground running.
Matt Eberflus.
Yes, that's probably the biggest thing that might be inhibiting them too, right? Is coaching. And we know how much coaching matters, Matt, in terms of, these Lions making the jump that they did from Patricia to Campbell. So you get a coach in Chicago. Okay, well then maybe I'll take them a little bit more seriously. But I think my expectations are the Lions should take care of business in the NFC North. They should, at a bare minimum, be a playoff team, because I don't. If you agree with this or not, Matt, I think that they have a top 5 roster in football.
The Lions?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
If you have a top 5 team, and especially when you look at their depth that I think that they've accumulated, you've seen some of the players make their way off this roster and onto other teams. The Lions are that team now, right? Where other franchises, other fan bases are saying, okay, well, this player left from the Lions. Our team should kick the tires on that guy. They have the depth to get them to, and I think now they have the experience, and now they have the bad taste in their mouth of what the conference championship game left. I'm not saying Super Bowl or bust. I'm not, ordering my Mexican food from the same restaurant as Dan Campbell where I want the whole enchilada. But I definitely have expectations for them to go to the playoffs, win a playoff game, be a team that is in the mix to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it with the way this team is constructed right now. And you mentioned Sewell earlier, and I'm going to run some of they're star players, they're star caliber players on this team. Real fast on the Vikings quarterback situation, you brought it up. JJ McCarthy right now, it appears as their number 3 guy. This could be a redshirt year for him based off of what they're seeing in minicamp. Does that surprise you?
Not really. I don't think it's all that surprising. I thought that, JJ McCarthy was going to be a guy who should sit behind a player like Sam Darnold. And especially when you look at, I think when you look at the way that they want to build long-term, like, yeah, you're paying Justin Jefferson. You have, you made the trade to get TJ Hawkinson. You drafted Jordan Addison. You have a lot of skill position players. Maybe you want to build up that offensive line a little bit more. You want to bring JJ along on pace and on schedule, because I don't think you want to destroy that guy's confidence. I think that's something that I'm not comparing 1-to-1 or whatever, but I think you saw a little bit of that with Zach Wilson. There are a lot of expectations right out of the gate. He, right. And I'm not saying that they're similar players even. I'm just saying that, like, in the situation where you maybe overwhelm a rookie quarterback, it might come back to bite you, and it might come back to bite you long-term. So I think it's the smart thing to sit JJ and let him, learn behind Darnold. And also, I think as a Lions fan, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with that either, as long as it's not Nick Mullins.
Well, he's behind Nick Mullins right now, which is
right.
Crazy to think. He's 3. I mean, Nick Mullins, hey, he dropped 400 on the Lions, but he also threw the ball to the white jerseys like 5 times. So
yeah, Fatu Melifonwu, I think, sent him a fruit basket.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no question. No question. All right. What concerns you? You mentioned before about how good this roster is, and this is a really good team, but is there 1 or 2 things that you kind of still are not 100% certain on with this Lions team right now?
I think it comes back to the pass rush, and yeah, I'm very optimistic about what DJ Reader is going to open up for the, other opportunities, if not for himself, but for other guys like Davenport and, Aiden Hutchinson. If James Houston can be, a pass rusher again, you get him going. Josh Paschal, we still need to see something from him. I think it's the defensive line as far as their pass rush goes. I like the idea that Aaron Glenn is, getting more tools in the toolbox, and maybe he has to be a little less dependent on being so blitz happy and so blitz heavy, because he has some corners now who can play comfortably in press man. But it's something that I need to see the pass rush take a significant step forward. If the pass rush doesn't take that step forward, again, I think you're putting a lot of stress on that back end of that defense. And just that's what everybody wants to do in this league, Matt. Everybody wants to throw the ball. Everybody wants to air it out. And there are so many good receivers across the league, especially in the NFC North, that if the Lions can't get to the quarterback, it's going to make it hard to defend the pass. And that's my biggest question mark and my biggest concern, I think, going into the season.
Ryan, great to see you as always. Appreciate the time. Great visit, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Ryan Mathews with us from Pride of Detroit. Check out his work at prideofdetroit.com. And again, they have the entire schedule of about 8 or 9 dates now where the public, you guys, can go check out Lions training camp starting. They open, they report the 23rd, 24th they practice, but the 27th is the first date with season ticket holders where it's open to the public down in Allen Park. Back with a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions again tomorrow. Thanks again for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts, and please subscribe on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel.